rebound. The banking industry, I'm talking not so much the regionals, but the multinationals, they're nowhere near as strong as they used to be. But the recovery from 2007, 8, and 9 is dramatic. They are so much stronger than they were then. So, could they be stronger than they are now? Yeah, but the recovery has been major. And the airlines are very cyclical, but some of them are getting to be very profitable again. Unfortunately, that cycle has been traditionally one that changes. So there's been a lot of progress in some areas. I want to get to a couple things with math. My biggest concern has to do with national resolve. We have tremendous political gridlock, and that is nonpartisan. I don't like either party, so if you like party, you're not going to like what I'm saying. But many politicians are focused on their own re-election, and they're interested in their party. I don't think anyone wants to do harm to this country, but I don't think it really counts what's right for this country. It's about narrow interests. And we have people in Congress and the Senate who are in a position to get lots of power, lots of prestige, and a lot of money after they retire out of that with all sorts of lobbying opportunities. So I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but I think that's one of our biggest problems, getting our people to worry about the country. Somebody, unless they're really radical, I'm rooting for whoever's president to do a good job. I want the country to be successful. I don't want them to fail so I can win on the other side. I think that's a horrible attitude. That's really what it is. I want to give you a couple math examples. The first one is a rough approximation. Our economy is, given all those positives from where we were, is really not strong. And what's keeping the economy going is government deficit spending. And if you think of this way, if the government ends up spending money it doesn't have, it's money going in the economy. It's very stimulative. It causes jobs, creates them. It causes people to have money to spend money. And it's a real positive, but it's borrowing against the future. If you end up having higher taxes and less spending from the government, it's like a vacuum cleaner. You have less going out. People don't have as much money that they could have spent because it's been taxed, or people don't have as much because they're not getting the money from the government as much from their excess spending. So we use a simple example, and those who are involved with economics know of multiplier effects and velocity of money. I'm taking a little more simplistic view just to make a point. If one said that we had deficits of $1 trillion, and less than that now, they were more than that most of the last 4 years, and you said if that related directly to jobs, and it could be more than that, you said, how much is a job? Well, if you take health care and all the fringe benefits, probably on average 100,000 would be on the high side of jobs, but you use any number you want. If we ended up immediately getting rid of the deficits with higher taxes and less spending, I think that number of 10 million jobs being lost is not an exaggeration. It could be worse. 10 million jobs. That's a depression. So if the government were fiscally responsible by raising taxes, cutting spending, we'd be in a disaster. Those on the right wing, and I'm not, it's an academic institution, so please, free speech, and if you disagree, please speak up. Those people on the right wing, let me get my point, I'll come right to you, sir. On the right wing who think we can go to a balanced budget immediately are economically, in my mind, crazy. It's my own view. Those on the left wing who think we can have deficits forever are economically crazy in my view. And it just, the numbers are too staggering. Yes, sir, please.
I have a problem with your logic here.
Okay.
Think of all the money we've spent trying to boost the economy, and we don't have 20 million new jobs back. What happened?
What happened is the economy is not as strong as people think.
No. You said that if we reduce spending $1 trillion, it could cost us 10 million new jobs, 10 million lost jobs. We put several trillion into the economy. We haven't gotten those back in jobs, have we?
No. I'm saying that's because the economy has been weak. If you didn't do it, I'm not in favor of these deficits. I'm very opposed to them. But you can't fix it overnight. It's too big a problem. And I'm saying that the underlying economy without the government deficits right now would be far worse than it is. The position that we got ourselves into is absolutely horrible and it's obscene. But that's the situation. And if you took the deficit spending away, the economy would be much worse than it is today. I'm not trying to argue that the government spending should have caused a whole bunch more jobs. I'm just saying that with the deficit we have, we're taking money out of the bank, and we're making the economy stronger than it otherwise would have been. But we're going to end up paying for that later because we're borrowing money in order to keep the economy a little more balanced than it was. That's the point that I was trying to make. Let me get to something that's a little more mathematical, if I may. I don't know much of my time here. Those of you who are interested in investments, I did want to talk about bonds because the stock market's been flying. The bond market is one of the least attractive bond markets ever. What do? If you want to have things you think are safe, if you're in the stock market, how many people predicted the stock market will be up 20 to 30% this year? I don't know that. And how many people predicted from 2007 to 2009 the economy would almost collapse? I don't know anybody. So you watch CNBC, you listen to all these nice people. I mean, their forecasts aren't necessarily any more brilliant than anyone else's. Not that they're not good people, but your alternatives are to put money at risk in the markets or put it in things that may have very low returns, or take risks and trying to get a little extra. So I want to run through some math examples, and I hope you bear with me because it is a little bit of math. If somebody has, give you an extreme example, a 6.5% bond due in 75 years, and Disney came out with some years ago, and they called them Sleeping Beauty bonds. And about in the late 19th century, railroads had 100-year bonds. And normally 30 and 40 years is about as long as it goes. I'm trying to exaggerate a little bit, but these are real. If you had a 6.5% bond, what that means, it's different than a house mortgage, in as much as in a house mortgage you pay some principal and interest. With a bond, it basically says, well, for $1,000, they'll pay you $65 a year. Then in 75 years, they give you $1,000 back. They don't give you the $1,000 over time. But it's kind of like a mortgage because you're accredited. And so you have this bond, it pays $65 a year, and you get $1,000 back in 75 years. Let's say interest rates in the market change. And if the rate is 6.5%, the bond's going to be worth $1,000. Let's say that interest rates in the market for this maturity went to 12%. Okay? So you got a bond paying $65 a year, and you get $1,000 back in 75 years. Another bond, comparable quality, market conditions change, will pay you $120 a year and give you $1,000 back in 75 years. Now, you have the $65 bond, you want to sell it. Any idea what happens to the price?
It's about $600.
We're going to go around, we're going to find out. Sir, what were you going to say?
It's going to go down.
Okay, we have a gentleman that said it's going to go to $600. Anyone else have any other ideas what it might go to?
Probably lower than that.
What do you think, sir?
We'll be a little lower than that.
Lower? Pick a number just for a discussion.
550.
$550. All right, well, anyone else? This group is amazing. I've had answers when I do this, $800, $200, $950. The number on this, depending on which method of compounding it, is $600. Excellent. Excellent. Let's look at another one. Since you already have this, it'll get easier. But I want to make a point about this for investments. Oops, I already did it. So if you have a 15% rate, you lose about half the value of the bond. Nothing's wrong with the bond. What this means is that if you bought a bond, rates go to 15%, and you can think, let's say that's $500. Now, if you get it $500, that means that you could buy for $1,000 how many bonds if they're $500 each? Two. And at $65 each bond a year, that's $130. And that's 13%, but you're going to get double your money back later. So that gives you a 15% in equivalent. The math basically gives you about an equivalent rate of return. So a bond will go down in price to cover what would make it equivalent to other bonds. Now let's say you bought the bond at 15%. There's some very talented, bright people here. And you bought it, the 6.5% bond for $500, I'm rounding up. What if interest rates go to 6.5%? Any idea what the bond does?
Double.
I'm sorry?
Roughly double.
It goes right back to $1,000. So if you end up buying a bond that's big discount and rates go down, you can have a big gain. If you buy a bond when rates are low and the rates go way up, you're going to get caught. So the point is that if people think bonds are safe, if interest rates change a lot in either direction, the value of the bonds changes a lot. And if you have a long-term bond with a major change in interest rate, you could have a 50% change in the value. And you don't think of bonds as being that way. Let me give you another example at an extreme. Let's say that you had a $1,000 bond, and we'll say it's a very low rate, but it pays 0%. I mean, nothing wrong with the bond, but the rates jumped to 20%. So it's not from 6.5 to 12 or 15, it goes 0 to 20, but instead of 75 years, it comes due tomorrow. Any idea what the $1,000 bond might sell for? What do you think?
$1,000.
$1,000? Not exactly.
No, about 990 or something like that.
Anyone else?
1001.
Okay. Very simply, if you want to do a back of the envelope, a 20% return on $1,000 is how much a year? $200. Divided by 365 days to make it simplistic, it's about 55 cents a day interest. So if you bought the bond for $999.45, the next day you get $1,000, the rate of return annualized is about 20%. So what happens, and I'm giving you real extremes, what happens is that if you are worried about interest rates going higher, you want to be short-term on your bond. If you think that rates are way up and they're going to go down, you want to lock in some amount long-term. But the volatility of bonds, independent of the quality, is far more extreme than people think. We're saying an average of less than 2 years to maturity. We're telling our clients, always being truthful, that protection of principal is real important, and the rate of return is going to be 0. But we'd much rather do that than go out longer term for a much too small a risk premium. So some of you who may have taxable or tax-free bonds that are in funds that are long-term, if we had them, we would have sold them. We don't want to take the risk for several percentage points. In my mind, it's not worth it. And if you have municipal funds, you're going to see Michigan bonds, Illinois bonds, Nevada bonds, California bonds, things that will get higher yields that we're avoiding. So it's very, very crucial for at least you to be aware of that when you make your own decisions. Okay. The challenges facing the economy, I mentioned the gridlock, and I mentioned the deficits. We were up to $1.4 trillion in 2009. We've run about 680 to 1.3 the last 4 years. The deficits are projected to come down for a while, but as our society ages, they're scheduled to go back up gradually over time. And these are not sustainable. The state budgets are under duress. The estimates, University of Rochester study estimates, and this is an estimate only, state and local pension funding that they have is $4 to $6 trillion underfunded. And that's a staggering sum. And their expectations that some cities can never get themselves out of it over time. Yes, sir?
Do you have any idea which states are responsible for the big chunk of this?
California.
In general, it'll be ones that have very much strong labor contracts. So I would think that places like California, a lot of cities there would be a problem. I would think some of the industrial states like Michigan, Illinois, and the Midwest, again, this is judgmental, I don't have data, so I know in Ohio, where they have a lot of these pensions. There are a lot of them in New York where there's a very strong labor union. I know we grew up in Long Island, and that's a huge problem for them overall. Ones that are a lot less labor friendly would probably tend to be in better shape.